Hi, my name is Norman. This is my attention-seeking dog. And this is the camera setup which I normally use when creating YouTube videos. Over the years, of course, it changed. I had it bigger, had it smaller, but for now, this is how it looks. We got a follow focus on the side and a field monitor here on top. And I think, to me, it's close to perfect. Like, it's very versatile, easy to use, helps me a lot tracking focus, even though it sometimes doesn't look like it. But there's this one thing which is driving me crazy, and that's the battery system of the field monitor. I know those tiny batteries here aren't the largest MP batteries available, but even with the larger ones of those, you get like maybe 60 minutes for that monitor. And that's not a lot, especially considering that for some reason it drains quicker than it charges, at least on my charging station, which I have here at home. So running that monitor on batteries on a long day is not possible at the moment. And also, it kind of stresses me out that I always have to worry about the battery of that monitor. So it's time to end this madness here. Yeah, we need unlimited power. The industry standard for more juice is the V-mount battery system, but you gotta pay a premium just to get started. Because I don't really need the mobility of a battery, I opted for this €8 power supply instead. It's rated at 100 watts, 12 volts, 8.3 amps, I think. This will be strong enough to power the monitor and perhaps more in the future. So let's start with the project. I figured it's best to actually build that thing from back to front. So we gotta start with those barrel plugs first because they are at the end of the chain. Unfortunately, there's no guaranteed way of knowing the polarization of those barrel plugs. There is a standard, but well, there are still people out there who do as they wish. Luckily, I had a smaller 12-volt power supply. I mean, it technically can also power the field monitor, but I'll tell you later why I'm not using it. What's important is that it has a little diagram on the sticker here, which tells me that the inner pin is the positive side and the outer ring is the negative side. And then I used a multimeter to figure out which part actually came out at which leg at the end of the barrel plug. And well, the shorter one is the pin, so the positive side in our project. And at the other end of the wires, I added some JST connectors. I know the S in JST stands for solderless, but yeah, I just soldered it for good measure, just to be sure. And then it was time to put the first parts into the housing. It's a very, very tight fit, but you know, nothing a little love couldn't fix. And a little bit of hot glue. Well, then I realized that I forgot to add the threaded brass inserts. Yeah, it's a lot easier without parts already installed. But still, better late than never. And after finishing up the male parts of the JST connectors, of course, we also need a female part. For that, I'm just doing some hand wiring on a breadboard. It's basically 2 lanes, one positive, one negative, of course. And yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. At the side which is going out to the power supply, I just decided to hardwire 2 wires for simplicity. But I added a Y split because for some reason the power supply has 2 positive and 2 negative sides, and well, I might as well just use them. Don't know why, just felt right. Yeah, putting the breadboard into the case is also, of course, a very tight fit, but let's just say I finally found a use for those stupid batteries. And now to the power supply. It's actually very well built, but yeah, it doesn't really make sense to have 2 housings, to have one housing inside the other. So yeah, I designed my housing to just take the plain PCB of the power supply. And yeah, unfortunately we have to disassemble it and get rid of the fancy aluminium housing and end up with just the plastic one. That way we were able to save just a little bit of volume. Yeah, the project has been running pretty smooth so far, but to be honest, it's not a real project without some minor hiccups. So here is one of those. Yeah, I cut those wires way too short, so I had to extend them. Note to future self, please just cut your wires a little bit longer. It's gonna save you a lot of time and nerves. And now the cables are finally long enough to put them into the terminal. You see me using the original cover of the housing to see which one of those terminal is positive and negative, and then I just, put them in accordingly. And now we get to the mains voltage. So this is an IEC plug, and it came with a fuse and a switch. The switch is very nice, but I'm not sure about the fuse because, yeah, it's rated for 6 amps at 220 volts. So if I manage to draw 1300 watts out of a 100 watt power supply, yeah, I may have different problems. So for now, I'm just going to use it because it's what I have, but I think it's wise to replace it soon. Anyway, business as usual, checking the wiring and trying to figure out which wire goes where, and then soldering the connections accordingly. And now here's another perfect example of me being a tiny little bit too overconfident about my CAD skills. Starting the assembly before doing a test fit. You can see I'm having a hard time putting the screws in because they aren't aligned. I think I'm mismeasured. But as usual, that's nothing a little off can't fix. And while we are at mismeasuring, here's another thing. I forgot to include the pins at the backside of the IEC socket into my design. So again, if it doesn't want to fit, I'm just gonna make it fit. I'm using pliers to bend over the pins. So those pins, they actually look like they're not very sturdy. So I'm just gonna make sure that I apply the forces in the correct direction to actually bend the pins instead of breaking them off. And as a bonus, it's additional mechanical hold for the wires which I soldered. And just like that, I am now able to close up the housing and we're done with the electronics. So now, the moment of truth. This is off and this is off. I turn this one on. And now if I turn this one on and the light stays on, I'm already happy. That's very good. We got positive feedback here, light is on. And also here a little blue light showing that the power supply is supplying power. So, no blue smoke. That's very good. And here's one thing. I know we're all very excited now to hook this up, but first we need to check the voltage if it is what it actually promises. 11.7, 11.7, 11.7. That's all right. I'd rather have not enough than too much. So let's hook things up. But before, a quick double check just to make sure that it's actually able to power the screen. And a little side project. Let's just hope that the plant is going to survive this. Anyway, it's time to put the power supply onto my camera rig. And for that, I designed a little bracket which is supposed to go into 2 remaining M3 holes on the backside of the housing and around the center post of my tripod. I had to remove the ball head first and sand off the overhangs a little bit, but it was a really nice fit and everything went together as planned, which is always surprising, but nice. And that's basically it. Unfortunately, well, I can't show it to you because I couldn't wait to use the power supply, but it's making my life easier already. So now I have just one large cable going down there, and this power supply is actually able to power a fictional system. You know, I built that for the future, of course. So for now, it's just powering the screen on top, but in future, I can see myself also getting a dummy battery for the camera, and maybe one day I can splurge on a remote controlled follow focus. I don't know, but those two systems also would run on 12 volts, so that's why I'm not using that one anymore. And also I don't like the power brick on the floor, but that's just a small issue. The larger issue is that this little one here is not capable of powering an entire system. But this big one, it is. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope also that you learned something today. Maybe, you know, I'll release the files, of course, and maybe it's gonna help you to also make your recording life a little bit easier. Yeah, and see you in the next one.